Colorado suffers its first defeat on the gridiron in 2020, a 38-21 loss to Utah and Boulder. Brian, obviously the story of the game is Nate Landman going down with a season-ending injury. That happened with 2.5 minutes left in the first half. And at that point, Utah had only scored 7 points. They were nearly a half in.
Yeah, and the defense right after that, they step up, force a Utah punt that Brennan Rice returns for a touchdown, and CU's up 14-7 at that point, and you're thinking, okay, it's late first half, you just made it 14-7, and you get the ball to start the second half, and but miscue after miscue started after that, and things kind of snowballed for the Buffs, and Utah just kind of dominated the last 31 minutes of this game.
Yeah, and this goes beyond football. I know you appreciate Nate Landman as much as I do, just in terms of the type of character he's shown throughout his career. I mean, he's been a team leader. I mean, the team leader for a couple of years. And there's no one that outworks him, and he's been great with the media. We heard the story with Tyson Summers. I mean, he tells his defense coordinator that I'm going to take your son fishing, catches a bunch of fish. And so I think he's eyeing an NFL future, and your heart just breaks for him, suffering this injury.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he's a guy that this week was telling us that, hey, I came back for a reason because I had some unfinished business. And he thought about the NFL a year ago. And, they're in this position in a lot of ways because of Nate Landman. And I'll be honest with you, we talked so much about Laviska Shenault the last few years, and I thought Laviska was the best player CU's had in 25 years. I almost think it's Nate Landman, Adam, and I think you can make an argument for that because Laviska, went through so many injuries. I think Nate's had almost a bigger impact, I'll put it that way, than Laviska Shenault had because he's been such a steady rock in the middle of that defense, and it was sad to see him go down. I mean, looking through the binoculars, watching him down there, I mean, he's grabbing onto the trainer because he's in so much pain. I looked at him when he came out for the second half, and it was sad because he's such a part of this team, and there he was off to the side by himself, with the walking boot, with the scooter, and he's by himself, and you could just tell he was emotional. I watched Brady Russell walk up to him, and they talk for a second. Brady kind of puts his arm around him, and so you can tell that that had to be hard for Nate, and honestly, he mentioned this week too that this is the first year his parents haven't been able to come to every game, and how much that meant to him that they weren't going to be there, and so all of this is just kind of it's a disappointing ending for Nate Landman more than anything. This loss stinks for the Buffs, but more than anything, you're right. The story is Nate Landman because for him, he's the heart and soul of this team, and and he's no longer going to play for the Buffs. I don't think. I mean, he could come back next year, but I can't imagine he does.
Yeah, you mentioned that you feel like he overtook Laviska Shenault in terms of being the best Buff in a really long time. I think this 4.5 game stretch of football is as good as we've seen individual play out of any Buff. And, he was really good before, but he had some pass coverage issues, and he had gotten better in that area and just was playing with such reckless abandon, and definitely a shoo-in for the Buffalo Heart Award winner. I think he was even before this. But assuming this –
real quick, I would say the only thing that rivals what Nate's done these first 5 games is what Laviska did the first 5 games of 2018, which was pretty impressive. Put him in the Heisman race. But I just think overall, long-term, the impact that Nate's had, I mean, Laviska's the most talented player they've had since Rashawn Salaam.
But that leadership component's a huge deal.
It is, and I think that if you throw all that together, I think Nate might be the most impactful player, at least in the 10 years I've been covering this team. I think he would be number 1 for me.
Assuming this is the end of the line for Nate Landman in a Buffs uniform, he ranks 11th all time in program history in tackles, which is pretty impressive when you consider his true freshman season. He was only used in short yardage situations, and that was more towards the end of the season. And then this was obviously for him a 4.5 game. It'd be crazy to think what he would have done in terms of that had he had a chance to. Probably doesn't catch Barry Remington, but if he had played 4 full seasons, what his stat total would look like.
Yeah, he winds up with 2.5 seasons basically, instead of 4. So and true freshman year, I know people are are upset they didn't play him earlier. Ross Ells is a very good linebacker coach, and he talked a lot about how Nate he started to come on late in that year. I don't think he was ready to do what he was doing in the first half of that season. So it's more so, this season being a shortened season, and I really wanted, to see a Pac-12 title or a bowl game, whatever, for guys like Nate. Nate's worked so hard to get to a bowl game, and now if the Buffs get to play in one, he doesn't get to play in it, and that's the stuff that when you and I do this, Adam, I don't feel like I think I've lost my fandom. I more root for people than I do teams at this point. And I root for a guy like Nate Lamb, and I feel for a guy like Nate because I wanted to see him play in a bowl game. And that's something he came to college for, and he's never going to get a chance to do that, and that's sad to me.
Yeah, getting back to the football game and building off Nate Landman's absence, Utah scores 31 points from that point forward, just a little more than a half, and it was just incredible, the stark difference. I know Carl Jarrell, he's got this next man up thing, and that's what he's got to say as the head coach. But, I mean, come on. We're all smart enough to – our eyes aren't lying that badly. The defense just was not the same the rest of the game.
Yeah, and, we've talked about those guys before. I mean, Akil Jones is a good player. John Van Diest is a good player. But you can say next man up all you want. You don't have another All-American Butkus Award candidate, behind Nate Landman. You just don't. I mean, next man up is great, but there's some people that are just different, and Nate Landman's different, and he makes a massive difference in that defense, and we see it. He went out for. I mean, you go back to the Arizona game last week. Remember, he was out for that one drive for a good portion of it, and Arizona just methodically moves down the field. Not even methodically, it was quick. I mean, it was 4 or 5 plays. All of a sudden, they're in the 5. Call a timeout, and Landman races onto the field, and Arizona doesn't score. And I know it was Nigel Bethel getting the interception, but Nate was on the field and makes an impact there, and he made the first play, and then he gets back on the field. There's a difference when a guy like that's on the field, and I think John Van Diest and Akil Jones can handle it. They've got to do a better job though, but they're not going to do what Nate Landman does. He just can't do that.
That's going to be a huge storyline for this program moving forward. Tyson Summers is a good defensive coordinator. I think we can say that fairly definitively, given what we've seen out of his defenses in terms of the improvement they've made. I just wonder, is Nate Landman so talented that as a defensive coordinator, you kind of suit your defense around his strengths or can he retool this with the personality he has? This coming week, we don't know they're going to play yet, but possibly in a bowl game. I guess that's a big question mark going forward, but that's definitely the number one question mark with this program now. Yeah,
and I'm going to give Tyson Summers the benefit of the doubt because I think that we've seen, last year and this year that he has, kind of tooled the defense around the talent that he has. And last year they struggled and they made some in-season adjustments. So all right, let's fit our personnel and what they do well. And they played well at the end of the season. I think he'll find a way to do it. You just can't replace a Nate Landman. But, I think Tyson's a smart enough guy that he can find ways to maybe, mask that a little bit to where it's not 31 points in about a 31-minute stretch against a team like Utah. But, it's going to be tough without Nate. But I'll give Tyson Summers the benefit of the doubt. We'll see what he can do.
All right, I said we're going to focus on other stuff, and then we went right back to Nate Landman. That's just how impactful he is on this team. But I guess next we'll talk about Sam Neumeier. He was playing really well early on. He was 11 of 19 in the first half, and a majority of those passes were dropped. He had just a beautiful touchdown pass to Maurice Bell in the first half. That was Maurice Bell's first touchdown, and drops were an issue throughout the game. I understand the weather, and it's not like Utah, they caught every pass in the game, but this has been kind of a reoccurring theme this year that they've got to fix because you play a Utah that's finally got the rhythm. If you were going to play a USC or an Arizona State, those are teams you're going to have to make be more consistent catching the ball against, and so it's finally kind of caught up to them today.
Yeah, and we talked about it before this game that, don't look at Utah as a 1-2 team. This is a much better team than that. And this is a team that you cannot have the type of mistakes that the Buffs had and win the football game. I mean, you just can't compile that many mistakes. And that includes turnovers, that includes drops. And there was a couple on a third down or things like that could have kept a drive alive. And instead, it kills a drive, and now all of a sudden you're punting. And whether Utah scores again or not, after that, that helps, but it prevents you from moving the chains. And so the Buffs, I credit Sam Neuer. He played, like you said, he played well for a good portion of this game. But towards the end of the game, I think he was maybe affected by the shoulder that he aggravated in this game, and it showed. And he wasn't sharp at the end. So it was just a tough one for the Buffs overall.
Jarek Brossard has his 100-yard streak, ended at 4. It was still pretty solid, though. He only had 14 rushing attempts, which is by far the fewest he's had this season. He had 80 yards. That's a decent 5.7-yard rushing average, and maybe you could even say it's good against this Utah defense because they've been so stout against the run. There's some controversy, Brian, late there in the second quarter. There's less than a minute left. It's 2nd and 2 at the CU 31-yard line. Brossard loses a fumble. That results in a field goal for Utah going into halftime. I saw a lot of fans frustrated with that decision on social media. Brossard had not fumbled up to that point. He even said that ball security is job security this week. That had been a strength of his. What were just your thoughts on that? I think that momentum went back to Utah a little bit, but I mean, when you look at this game in its entirety, I don't think that decision is one that cost CU this football game.
Yeah, I mean, initially the thought is, a lot of fans were saying, why don't you just kneel on the ball? It's easy to say that when there's a fumble, but they took over with 50 seconds left, and if you kneel on the ball, then fans get upset that you're being too conservative. I thought that what they should have done is Neuer was clicking at that point. Maybe put the ball in the air a little bit, but I don't really have an issue with those play calls and run the football a little bit. We saw last week Jarek Brossard broke some big runs, so maybe you break one in that situation and get yourself a field goal at the end. And like you said, Brossard hadn't had an issue with fumbling, so I don't think that's really a concern as a coaching staff at that point because he hasn't shown it. So I didn't really have a problem with the play calls. It's just an unfortunate situation that Jarek drops it and there's 13 seconds left and Utah's able to get 3 points out of it.
There was a lot of that first half where you could tell Utah was selling out for the run. So I know there was some frustration too that there was so many passing plays, but that's maybe one benefit we have being at the game, as you can kind of see from the press box and look up above. And they were trying to take what was there, and had CU not dropped some of those passes, then people would have been pretty excited about what they would have produced in that first half.
Yeah, the first couple of drives, I'm not sure. I don't think Jarek ran the ball once. Utah's strength is stopping the run, and they've been vulnerable against the pass. And CU's game plan clearly was, all right, let's avoid their strength right off the bat and hit them with some passes. And you're right. Without some drops, that probably works. But they drop passes and they wind up punting those first couple of times. So it's not always play calling. And I didn't love the play calling all day, but I don't think that it's I think play calling is an easy thing to point to when a lot of times really what it is execution. And and sometimes you got to give credit to the other team that they just kind of step up and make good plays.
I can't believe we got this far into our analysis video without bringing up Brennan Rice. He was really the bright spot for the Buffs tonight. 179 all-purpose yards. He had that 81-yard punt return for a touchdown, a 61-yard touchdown on a short reception on the first play of the second half. I loved his comment on the punt return that he knew he had to beat that punter because if he let that punter tackle him, his teammates wouldn't have let him forget about it. And it was a nice little move, especially considering the fact that you don't really have great footing on that snowy grass.
Yeah, it was a great move and a great play by him. And he also mentioned that he was surprised to get the ball on that play, that they thought it was going to go to Dimitri and that the Utes defense, and I need to go back and watch it, but apparently the Utes punt team was going towards Dimitri, and if that's the case, then maybe the punter just put it in the wrong spot. But Rice was able to adjust and make the play, and honestly, credit to Dimitri because he made some good plays, some good blocks on that one, and then also the touchdown later in the third quarter.
Yeah, and sticking with the receivers, Katie Nixon had a long catch. Vontae Chenault had a long catch. Daniel Arias had a couple catches in there. Stanley, again, just one catch for 3 yards. Kind of just surprising that we haven't seen him be more productive. Mentioned that Maurice Bell had his first career touchdown. These guys have a lot of talent. It's just, again, here and there, the drop issues. But they are definitely spreading it around to a lot of different guys.
They are, and you and I talked about it before. I'm still just amazed that after what he showed against Stanford, Dimitri just not getting very many looks in the last 3 games since then. And I don't know how many times he was targeted today, but it doesn't feel like he's getting that many looks. And I still feel like he's their best receiver. I think an argument can be made for Vontae at this point, but I think Dimitri should be getting more looks. And they are spreading it around, but I think that there's a couple guys that maybe should get the ball a little bit more than they have.
Colby Purcell was back in action. Kari Cush was in the stadium, but he was not back in the lineup. I've got to imagine that some of that Pac-12 medical protocol just to make sure he's good to go after getting COVID-19. And then we saw Will Sherman get banged up a little bit, but he came back in the game as well. What were just kind of your overall thoughts on the offensive line today?
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Rodriguez is doing a fantastic job, honestly, because it's been a lot of patchwork. And I don't know if you watched Mark Johnson's Buff Stampede show this week that they do, but he talked to Rodriguez and he said, hey, we got some Band-Aid and super glue that we're trying to use with this group, and he had to today. I mean, Jake Wiley went in there for a little bit at left guard. Colby Purcell was back, which helps, but Casey Roddick, I think, has done a good job moving from right guard to left guard, and I thought Cannon Ray played pretty well today. So credit to them. I think they're doing a pretty good job on the offensive line, and I know they didn't rush for a ton of yards today, but a lot of that is due to Utah. Their defensive front is, to me, if it's not the best in the Pac-12, it's right up there with Washington year in and year out, and that's a tough front to do much against.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so incredible. I think I mentioned this in our preview video, the coaching job that Kyle Whittingham has done there. You lose 6 defensive players to the NFL draft. You lose Zach Moss to the NFL. He gets drafted, and you plug in this true freshman, Ty Jordan. He runs for 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. You still have a really stout run defense, and there's just a team, and it's unfortunate for Colorado that they have to play them later in the season because they are so well coached, and they're going to get better throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, and another guy that we haven't talked about is Britton Covey for Utah. That when they lose their first 2 games, Covey had a hamstring injury, didn't play the first game, barely played the second game. He finally gets back last week, and he scores on a punt return and a reception. Today, what did he have?
9 catches, yeah,
76 yards and a touchdown. He also had, looking at it, 88 yards on kickoff returns, including a 40-yarder. He had a 28-yard punt return. That kid's good. I mean, he's one of the best all-purpose guys in the Pac-12. He's a difference maker. We talk about how different the Buffs are without Nate Landman. The Utes are basically 2-0 with Britton Covey and 0-2 without him. And he's one of those guys that's a difference maker, and he burned the Buffs a lot today.
Mekhi Blackman got his first career interception. He's been really solid in coverage this year. There was one deep pass that got completed against him, but he was right there. It was the best catch of the day for Utah. So he's been a bright spot for the Buffs this year.
Yeah, it was a really nice catch by Utah, and I that's got to be the longest catch that Mekhi's given up this year because he hasn't given up many. He's played really well, and it's been fun to watch him because I think I always kind of looked at him as he's a nice slot or a nice nickel type corner, but he's really stepped into that to one of the main corner spots, and he's played well.
I'm sure you're kind of like me where you're on Twitter during the game, but you got other things going on. And usually there's a lot of comments that I just can't get to. And there's a lot of people in my notifications, they felt that there was an officiating conspiracy, that the fact the Pac-12 doesn't want Colorado to win because then there's going to be this public outcry, to get them in the championship game. I think there were some questionable calls. I think we are benefited by being in the press box by seeing some of the coverages and what the other team is doing. But I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch the game. I don't have a strong feeling on the officiating there. I'm not usually a conspiracy theory guy. Did you ever venture into that territory?
I'm not really a conspiracy theory guy at all. I just think Utah played better today. I think there's always so much officials can do, and I think sometimes it's obvious when the team is better. And I think honestly, Utah played better, and I think Utah might be a better football team. I mean, the Buffs have had a really nice season, but let's be honest, this team was not supposed to be very good this year, and Utah's won the South the last 2 years. That's a program that right now is better than what CU is, and CU is trying to get to that type of level, and I don't think they're there yet.
Kevin Sumlin fired at Arizona. With the Buffs, we don't have any idea who they're going to play next week. I mean, it's pretty much completely up in the air, right? We have no way to even guess at this point.
Yeah, we really don't. I mean, they could be in the Pac-12 title game, but we have no idea. I mean, who knows? I mean, if Washington can't play, does the Pac-12 take second place Oregon from the North with 2 losses, or do they take second place CU from the South with 1 loss? Who knows? So
they're going to take Oregon, would be my guess.
That would be my guess as well, but we don't know. So I mean, the Buffs could end up playing. I mean, if Washington can play, then maybe the Buffs play Oregon. You know, maybe they play USC. Maybe they play Washington. Maybe they play Washington State, Cal, Oregon State. Who knows? You know, I think. I mean, that maybe they play ASU. You know, that they haven't played yet. And it's going to be.
If you're a CU fan, I don't think you want that to happen after watching what Sun Devils did to the Wildcats.
I agree with you, but you know, I think snowballed in that one. I'm not sure that same thing would happen, but you know, for the Buffs, I think you hope you get a good matchup, and you know, hopefully it's at home. I think they've earned the right to be at home, although you know, we'll see what the Pac-12 does, because the Buffs have already had what is it? They've had 3 games in Boulder, 2 on the road. I'm not sure if they'll give them that 4th home game with only 2 on the road, but we'll see.
All right, and as if we're not busy enough covering the season, we've got the early signing period coming up on Wednesday. So I don't think I'm going to be getting a whole lot of sleep here these next few days.
Yeah, this week's going to be real easy, isn't it?
Man, because Colorado has only played in 1 bowl game, the last 13 years?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm used to the season being done for the signing day prep. But again, go ahead.
Yeah, wasn't the first early signing period in 2017?
That sounds right.
And and the Buffs' last bowl was 2016. So we've never had to deal with. I mean, the first early signing period, the Buffs were already done playing, and every year that there's been that early signing period,
that's right. Yeah,
the Buffs have been done for 3 or 4 weeks. So it's never been much of an issue. But now you've not only got, you know, signing day is on a game week, and you know, really the next 2 weeks the Buffs could play, you know, next week, have signing day, play in a bowl game. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it feels like maybe this year they should have just stuck with the 1 in February. It's not like visits are going to be taking place anyway, but
right.
I guess I don't make those decisions, so we'll just roll with it. But
I think a lot of coaches are glad to have it in December, though. Just they like to get guys locked up, you know. But for our purposes, maybe February would have been nice, but you know, and just get done with the season first. But you know, hey, we'll deal with it, and it's harder for you because you deal more with the recruiting than I do. But you know, I know you'll be up and at 'em early on Wednesday.
4:30 a.m. Wake up call. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, we'll be back. We'll find out who the Buffs are going to play, and then we'll have some analysis with signing day this upcoming week as well.